Hello and welcome to the Adobe Twitch channel. My name is Terry White, worldwide design and photography evangelist for Adobe. It is my pleasure to stream to you for the next hour on Intro to Lightroom CC. Lightroom for Beginners. This is going to be an 8-part class. You're watching part 1 right now. If you're watching the video on demand, thanks for watching the video on demand or replay on my YouTube channel. And we're going to be doing this in 8 parts, twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. So we're here on Tuesday for the first part, and this will go over the next 4 weeks, twice a week. So every Tuesday and Friday from 11 a.m. to noon Eastern Time, I will be taking you through different stages of Lightroom all the way from beginning to end. So at the end of the 8 classes, you should be pretty darn good at using Lightroom. But we're going to start off where most people have headaches, and that is how to really get started. How to manage their images, how to manage their catalogs, what's a catalog, how to manage folders, where should things be. These are all the kinds of things that once you get that part right from the beginning, the rest is pretty easy. Lightroom is not really a hard program to use. As a matter of fact, that's why a lot of photographers like it, because it is so easy. But I encounter people time and time again, and the first question they ask me is, should I start over? Should I create a new catalog and import everything in? Is it possible to clean up my catalog? Because what it is they started out making mistakes along the way in the very beginning that start to cost them later on. And when I say cost them, it costs them in terms of missing images. They can't find anything anymore. Images are all over the place. Some are in a folder on this drive, some are in a folder on that drive, some are still in a memory card. They're just, images are everywhere and they don't know where anything is. And again, this gets into A, not really understanding how Lightroom works, and B, not understanding how Lightroom works in the beginning, and then it's too late because you've already put everything everywhere. So Lightroom's very, like I said, very easy to use. And as long as you understand how it works from the terms of catalogs, folders, collections, and where your images are, it's a piece of cake. So let me get started and show you those things on our Creative Cloud Learning stream. This is my second one. The first one was 10 parts on Intro to Photoshop. So welcome to part 1, Intro to Lightroom. And B. Duncan, glad you're up early to watch me. And Flo, what's going on? You feel guilty now? A lot of people feel guilty, but that's okay. Is this for desktop, mobile, or both? Well, today is for desktop, but I have a whole day scheduled for mobile. So again, remember it's 8 parts. We will cover every aspect of Lightroom, so including a whole episode on mobile. All right, and if you are watching the video on demand, that is something what you just saw me do that you will see me do throughout the next hour. Because it is live, which you can join us live and ask questions just like they're doing. I look at the chat to make sure I'm addressing people that are live because they're here. So let's see, make sure I got everything else. All right, looks good. Okay, so let me switch over to my computer. That way you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'm in a Lightroom catalog. I'm in my main Lightroom catalog. I'm in the catalog I use every single day. And I've got 187,841 images in this catalog. So this is it. This is everything I do. Every image I work with, everything I work on. And I go to it and I use it every day throughout the day. Anytime I need to do anything with a photo. Whether I took the photo with a DSLR, whether I took a video with my DSLR, whether I took a photo with my iPhone, point and shoot, iPad, screenshot, whatever it is, I manage it all here in Lightroom. So when people ask, well, how many images can Lightroom handle? I don't think there really is a limit anymore. It's really about what makes sense. And the other question I normally get is, can you have multiple catalogs? You can. And I used to be a very pro multiple catalog person. Now I'm not anymore, because back in the days where I used to have a lot of catalogs was because computers weren't as fast as they are now. Things would slow down considerably if you had too many images in a catalog, and now it's just not the issue anymore. Also with Lightroom Mobile, you can only sync to one catalog at a time, So since I can only sync to one, I'm going to have one. But let's not start with my existing catalog. It's not as populated with everything. I'm going to start where you start, from scratch, with nothing. So I'm going to go up to my file menu. I'm going to say new catalog. And now we're going to address one of the biggest questions I get and problems I see from scratch. Where should this catalog be? By default, Lightroom, if you just launch Lightroom, it's going to default to a catalog it creates, and that catalog is going to be in your users pictures folder. So if you're Windows or Mac, that's where it's going to put the default catalog, because that makes sense. It's the pictures folder. That's where you think to manage pictures, so why not put the catalog there? So there are some rules about the catalog. Number one, it has to be on a local drive, not a network drive. And no, you can't share a catalog with two people simultaneously. There are some share options I'll talk about, but the catalog is on a local drive. Now, it does not have to be your internal drive. It can be an external drive. It can be a partition. It can be whatever, but it has to be local, not on a network server, not on a file share, not anything like that. The pictures, on the other hand, can be on a network drive, but the catalog itself has to be local. Now, should you put it in your pictures folder? Why not? Doesn't hurt where you put it, as long as you got enough room for it. Catalogs don't take up a ton of room because the pictures are what take up the most room, and the pictures don't have to be with the catalog. They could be anywhere, but the catalog should be somewhere where you're always going to have access to it. Since I'm working off a laptop 99.9% of the time, I want my catalog with me when I travel. I don't want to even have to plug in an external drive to get to the catalog, because the more work I have to do, the less likely I am to use it. So if I had to plug in an external drive every time I wanted to boot up Lightroom, I wouldn't be booting up Lightroom that often. So it stays on my internal drive. Now, the only other possible place I would tell you you might want to consider putting a catalog, instead of in the pictures folder, my catalog is actually in my Dropbox folder. Why there? Why not the Creative Cloud folder? Why there? Because I do have two computers. I've got two laptops. Some people have a laptop and a desktop. Some people have a desktop and another desktop. Some people have a computer at work, computer at home. Two computers. So when I'm on this laptop, I want access to my catalog. And when I go to my other personal laptop, I want access to the same catalog. I don't want to have to copy it over each time. So by putting it in Dropbox and having the same Dropbox folder, obviously synced on both computers, as long as I'm disciplined enough to wait for it to sync, that is the key. Then I have the beauty of going to the other laptop, waiting for it to sync, firing up Lightroom, and there's my catalog, because Lightroom's pointing to the same Dropbox folder in both computers. We're not going to do that today, but I just wanted to throw that out as an option, because if you're just starting out, then you need to consider your options up front. All right, now why not the Creative Cloud folder? Two reasons. Number one, I have way more room on my Dropbox folder than I do on Creative Cloud. I've got like a terabyte on Dropbox. On Creative Cloud, most users have 20 gigs. That's one reason. Actually, it's three reasons. Number two, I've been using Dropbox for years. I was using Dropbox before there was a Creative Cloud folder. So that's the original reason. Second reason is limited space. Third reason is, and this is more of a just the way Creative Cloud works, every time you make a change to a file in the Creative Cloud folder, Creative Cloud is trying to protect you by archiving a copy of that file. It keeps archives of things for 2 weeks. Since the catalog can change every time you launch it and every time you do something in it, that archive is going to start to grow. And what you could end up doing is literally running out of Creative Cloud folder space because of the archive. Now, you can go to the web and delete the archives. You can delete the old ones and manage it, but then you're having to manage it. So it's just, yes, it would work in the Creative Cloud folder. And yes, as a good Adobe citizen, I should be putting things there. But the Lightroom catalog just isn't one of them. It's just not as practical as putting it in Dropbox. That's all. Would it work? Absolutely. And as long as you don't run out of space, works perfectly. Same thing, it'll sync it to 2 computers. But then you have to manage that archive. That's the only other reason. So with that said, hang on, I see a question here. Is having over 22,000 images a possible reason? Is having over 22,000 images a possible reason why your Lightroom crashes and you have to force quit every time? I have 187,000, so no, that should not be a reason. 22,000 is really not much. So I would look for other things, other reasons, other causes for your crashes. The number of images you have is not the problem. All right, unless you have a very, very old system. Okay. All right, so I gave you my Dropbox spiel. We're not going to do it today, but just know that that is an option. Okay, so here we go. What do you call your catalog? Whatever you want. If you notice at the top, mine is called TWP Lightroom CC. TWP hat or dash Lightroom CC, and the .lr catalog is put in by automatically. So TWP, Terry White Photography, whatever you want to call it, you call it my catalog, whatever you want to call it, the name is irrelevant. It does not matter what you call it. I think if you don't create one, it just like if you don't create a new one, it just calls it by default, Lightroom catalog. It does not matter what the name is. So I'm going to call it TWP Twitch. That way I'll know what this one's for. All right, so we'll call it the TWP Twitch catalog, create. Now you notice what Lightroom just said? I'm closing your existing catalog and so I can create and open up this new one. Because Lightroom, yes, I know it's 2016, but Lightroom still only works with one catalog at a time. I wish it could open up multiple catalogs, but now I don't wish it as much since I'm only really working with one catalog at a time anyway. So it's going through, it's doing its creation process, it's creating a new catalog, it closed my existing one, now it's opening up the new blank empty one. And let's give it a second or two to finish that process. Or not. Lightroom, where's my catalog? Oh, I see it. Oh, it's over there. It's on the other screen. All right, let's pull it over. There it is. It just, for whatever reason, decided to open it up on my other monitor. All right, so we got the catalog here. I'm going to go ahead and size it a little bit better so we can see more of it. All right, and here we are. Lightroom from scratch, empty, blank, nothing in it. It doesn't know anything about any photos. It doesn't know anything about anything. It's your empty catalog. So, what's a catalog? Lightroom, for those of you who are techie enough to think about it in this term, is a database. It's a database of metadata. It's a database of links to images. Your images are never in Lightroom. They never have been. They never are in Lightroom. They're in the folders on your drives wherever you originally brought them in from. Lightroom does not store images. It links to those images. It stores metadata about those images, but it does not actually store the images. So it's up to you to decide where your images are going to be and then bring them and then reference them in Lightroom or import them. And see, the problem is we say the word import. That's what makes people think, oh, it's my images are in Lightroom now. I can delete them out of this folder. No, they're still in that folder. Lightroom's just looking at them in that folder. Don't delete them out of the folder. But import simply means look at this folder, bring in these images so I can see them in Lightroom, reference them, work with them, but they're always, always, always 100% of the time in a folder on your drive. They're never actually in Lightroom. Okay, so with that said, or they're never actually stored in Lightroom, I should say. So with that said, we're going to look at 2 ways to bring in images. We're going to get to a third way in another episode called tethering. But your images are either in one of 2 places right now. They're either on a memory card because you're a photographer and you just did a shoot, or you've already copied them to the computer and they're on a drive. Either way, this will work just the same. It'll work just fine. So let's do the memory card option first. Open up my sample memory card. We've got some images here. I'm going to stick it into a card reader connected to my computer. And sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. So, I mean, sometimes Lightroom will recognize the images or the card and bring up like it's doing right now, and sometimes it won't. And the reason usually that it doesn't is something else grabbed it. So if you were in a situation where you put in a card and the Photos app came up, which frustrates most people because, no, I don't want the Photos app, I want Lightroom. If the Photos app grabbed your card first, don't get pissed and just quit it. There's one thing you need to do before you quit it. In the upper left corner of the Photos app, it'll show the name of the card. And there's a checkbox, or I think an option that says, don't open the Photos app again when I put this card in. Do that first, then quit the Photos app. And then you can just hit import in Lightroom and it will show you that card. And it will never launch the Photos app again on that card. Now, Apple used to have an option to just not open the iPhoto. Well, back in the day of iPhoto, just don't open iPhoto when I stick in any card. But for whatever reason, they decided in their infinite wisdom to not have that option anymore. So now you have to do it card by card. All right, but once you do it, you're there. All right, so at this point, I'm now, hold on for a minute here. I'm not seeing questions over there, but I am seeing questions over here. So let me refresh. My chat is not refreshing on this device, but I see it refreshing over there. So let me get these first. Let me see if I make sure I didn't miss any questions we got here. All right, someone's answering the question about the 22,000 images. Can I change my catalog folder location along the way? Yes, you can change. You can, because once you quit Lightroom, your catalog is literally in a folder. You can move that folder and all of its contents to anywhere you want. So you can move it between drives. You can move it to the Dropbox folder after the fact. So yes, just quit Lightroom first. 187,000 images. Oh my God, yes. Still waiting to see Apple crash report. People back to me. Okay. What else? What else? What else? Dun, 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 dun. How did I get to work for Adobe? I applied for a job 20 years ago. Dun, 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 dun. Use. Okay. Yep, I hate the Photos app. I hate, well, I'm not a fan of the Photos app, period, but I hate when it launches when I don't want it. Yeah, the Photos app is just, Apple has always done that weird thing where they import the photos in their apps and make copies and all that in weird places, and thankfully we don't have to deal with that. Okay, all right, I think I got everything else, and now they're starting to come up over here. Okay, great. Okay, so now I'm at the import screen, and just remember that this import screen is a left to right workflow. So we start over here on the left where it says, I'm bringing them in from a card called Nikon D810. Yep, that's great. And I want to eject that card after import. Yes, because once I import them, I don't need the card on my desktop anymore. I don't need it mounted in my computer. Which, by the way, a little bit of trivia. This option, thanks to yours truly, back when Lightroom was first introduced, this was not an option. and I was showing Lightroom to a family member, and they were saying, okay, so how do I get my card out? And I said, oh, you go to the operating system and unmount it there. And as I was saying it, I realized how dumb that was. So I went to the Lightroom team and said, guys, can we have an export or an eject option? And they put it in. So I take credit for one feature in Lightroom. That was it. All right, so we got our thumbnails here. And of course, we can see some right off the bat that were like the flash didn't fire. We can see some mishaps here. So I can uncheck any ones that I don't want. I don't want those 2 frames. I'm not going to ever use them. I can see they're bad right off the bat. And there may be other ones that are bad, out of focus, blurry, eyes closed, whatever. And I can uncheck those too if I notice them. But in this point, I see them right now. So I see those 2 are useless. So why even bother wasting time copying those to the drive? Now you can also, if you want to check out an image up close, you can go into the loop view here and you can see an image that maybe that's in doubt. And there are lots of problems with these images, dark, white balance is off, but those are things I can correct. I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just trying to find images that, or trying to take care of images that I know I don't want. So for example, here's one where she's kind of looking down, not in a good way. So let's go ahead and uncheck that one. Why waste the space only to delete it later? Or the time. So whether you do that process now or do it later, doesn't matter, other than if you do it now, you're not wasting the time copying the images in. Okay, so once you've made your choices, checked or not, then the next thing becomes, how do you want to handle those images? Now, over the years, Lightroom's gotten a lot smarter about this. Before, it used to offer all 4 options, which didn't make any sense coming from a card. Why would I want to just add them from a card? The minute I take the card out of the computer, then they're missing. So I would never want to do that. So now that's grayed out. You can't choose it. But now you have a choice between copy and copy as DNG. If you're only working with JPEGs, then just use copy. You don't have to worry about DNG. If you're working with RAW files or RAW and JPEGs, then you want to have a choice here. You have a choice of copy or copy as DNG. The copy as DNG stands for digital negative. And what this will do, you notice that these are NEF files. That's because I shoot with a Nikon. That's Nikon's proprietary RAW format. Just like Canon's proprietary RAW format is CR2. And Sony's is AR something, whatever it is. But and I've worked with Olympus. I work with all kinds of formats, and they're all proprietary to that camera manufacturer. DNG is an open proposed standard by Adobe. So if you think about it this way, these are my lifelong memories that I never want to not be able to open. You never think about that with a JPEG, right? You can open a JPEG in anything from here on out. Doesn't matter what company comes and goes. Doesn't matter what software comes and goes. You know you'll always be able to open up a JPEG. But with a camera manufacturer, this particular RAW format, you don't know that RAW format is going to be supported forever. So DNG, since it's open, anyone can write an application to work with DNGs. Many companies do. I never have to worry about my RAW files not being able to be open someday. And if you think that won't ever happen, think Kodak. Kodak used to make RAW formats. Polaroid, RAW formats. Gone. They don't exist anymore. At least the old ones don't. And so you're now at the mercy of every other company that you hope will continue supporting those formats. If you shot with those cameras 10 years ago and you still kept them in those original RAW formats, you better hope 10 years from now that you've got software that can open them up. Because if you can't, you're done. Whereas in DNG and JPEG, I can't. So I always convert to DNG when I have the opportunity. All right, so copy as DNG. What it will do is copy all the image in Lightroom CC. What it does now is copy all the images first, and then it will do the conversion to DNG in the background. It used to do it as it went along, which would take longer to do the import. All right, next thing. So we're going from left to right. Where it's bringing them in from, eject when you're done. These are the ones I want. This is how I want it done. Then over here, how you want them handled and where you want them on your drive. This is the next big thing. So let me check my drive for a second. I know I was, okay, I'm good. May have been low on space because I copied a whole bunch of other stuff to my drive yesterday, but I got plenty of space for this. Okay, so we're good. Now, I can't stress the importance of this option enough. This is one of my favorite options. It's been here since Lightroom 5, and that is, Polaroid is not. Can you, okay, hold on. Let's do this. Legendary checkbox. Yes, let me make sure I go back, make sure I didn't miss anything. Dun, 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 dun. The other guy I was streaming with Creativity 360 is Corey Barker. So just Google Corey Barker and you'll find him. All right. Making sure I'm not missing anything else. Is it possible that you may do something unwanted to the catalog? Well, sure, it's possible. You can always do something unwanted to anything. Anything, if you mess with it long enough or bad enough, you can mess it up. So you'd have to be more specific. Can you mass resize a folder? Can you mass resize a folder image sizes in Lightroom? I don't know what that means, but yes, you can mass export out images into different sizes. Rest in peace, Kodak and Polaroid. Yep. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Will these be available to rewatch later? Yes, they will. At terrywhite.tv and the video on demand here at the Twitch channel on twitch.tv/adobe/profile. All right, so Build Smart Previews. This came out in Lightroom 5, and it is my that was like my favorite feature of Lightroom 5, because what this finally allowed us to do was build a preview of an image that stays with the catalog, not the images. That's a fraction of the size of the image, so that if I take my laptop somewhere with me and the images are at home still on a different drive, I can still work with them. I can manage them in the library module. I can develop them in the develop module. I can even export them out in smaller sizes, 2048 pixels on the longest dimension, but I'd be able to even export them out. So Smart Previews is a must for me. I always use this. Okay, don't import suspected duplicates. This is important when doing it from a card, because what you're doing is you shoot, put the card in, import some 24 in this case. You take the card out. You don't erase the card. You put the card back in the camera. You shoot some more. When you come back and put that card in again, what you don't want is the first 24 images. You already put those in. So don't import suspected duplicates means it will only import the new ones that it thinks are new. Now, this is one I don't use. It's a good option. I just don't use it. Make a second copy too. This is your one-time backup from a Lightroom import perspective. What this says is I'm out in the field. These are important images to me. They're on the card. I want to bring them into Lightroom so I can start working with them. But I'm so paranoid right now, and you should be, that I want to back them up to a second drive at the same time. So if you say make a second copy to and then choose the folder and the drive where you want the second copy, it'll import into your main drive and import a second copy into your second drive, like an external, thumb drive, whatever. And that way you'll have that second copy to use. This is a new option in Lightroom CC, add to collection. So we'll talk about collections later. I'm not going to do it now. All right. So I don't use the make second copy. I just don't, because I back up other ways, but that is an option. It is a nice option to have. All right. So next, develop settings. It's too soon to talk about that. So we're going to leave it on none. But metadata, we are going to talk about this. You can make your own metadata template. What this template is it just puts in metadata about you or your images, but mainly about you, into every single image you import. So for example, you know how your camera does EXIF data? So for example, if I go edit presets here, your camera, you know, like most cameras now, for especially a DSLR, you can put your name in the metadata. You can put your initials, that's about it. You can put photographer, maybe. But this allows you to go much, much further. So for example, if I go to mine, I can say that it's Terry White, copyright it. I can put an address in. I can put my website in. I can put all kinds of information that I want to be in every single photo I bring in. So you can make these templates, and you see I have some for other people, because sometimes I'm at events and I'm bringing in photos that other people have taken. So I want to give them credit on their own event. So like Jason Levine and I travel sometimes on tour. So when Jason gives me images, I use his metadata template so that all the metadata for his images get put in at the same time. All right, so anyway, we've got this all in, and I just basically have it chosen every time I bring this in. Now, keywords. We're going to get into a whole episode on keywords, so we're not going to do it now. And then last but not least, and this is the most important part of everything I've just shown you, this is what really counts. Where? They're on that card right now. Where do I want them to be on my computer? Because I'm going to take that card out, and eventually that card's going to get reformatted. So where do I want them to be copied as DNGs to on my computer? This is the most important option here. So you can tell it what folder, what drive, everything. You can manage all that down here. So right now, by default, they're just going to go in my pictures folder. But right now, by default, they're going to go in there in a bad way. They're just going to go loose in my pictures folder. So I absolutely want to put them in a subfolder in the pictures folder. And I can call that subfolder whatever I want. I can call it Gina, because that's who this is, Gina J. All right, so bringing in Gina's pictures, I'm putting them in a subfolder that it's going to create for me on the fly called Gina J in the pictures folder. So this is where you're telling it under destination where you want everything to go. Organize, and this is, thank God, this is now the default. Lightroom used to default to by date, and I never, ever, ever understood people that do this. Let's say you go out and you go out and shoot for the weekend. So you shoot some images on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you organize by date, what it will do is bring in all the images. So you bring in one card of images from each day, the whole card, and it'll put them in folders, not by name, not by Great Weekend in Texas. It'll put them in as date names. So it'll be Friday, May 1st, and Saturday, whatever, and Sunday, whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, when would I ever remember what I took on a particular day? Unless it was a special anniversary date. Other than that, I'm never going to remember what images are in which folder by date. So I never, ever, ever recommend this. I can't think of a single situation where I would prefer this. So into a single folder by the name of the event, by the name of the person, by the name of the party, by the name of the thing that you photographed. I'll always remember Gina. I may not remember which photos are in the Gina J folder, but I'll remember, oh, I know Gina J, so if I'm looking for her pictures, chances are they're going to be in that folder. So that I always do it that way. Sammy's first birthday party, if that's your kid's name. So that way, hey, I don't remember what pictures are in there, but it's his first birthday party. Guess what? That's a good place to start. Okay, so always do it into one folder by whatever name you want to give that folder, and Lightroom will create it on the fly. Let me just check for, I see Victoria answering lots of things here. All right. All right. Okay. So now let's go ahead and do the actual import. And I can answer more questions or talk while it's doing it, because it's going to take a few minutes to do those 20 some odd photos. And just making sure everything else is good. So let's go back up. Build smart previews. Don't make a second copy. Into a subfolder. And go. So now this process will be as fast as your card reader, your computer. So there's and of course the size of the images. Bigger RAW files take longer than smaller RAW files and smaller JPEGs. So this process, there is no set amount of time that this should take or not take, because it's dependent on all of those factors. You're using a slow card or slow card reader, guess what? It's going to copy slower. Because right now it's copying all these images to that Gina J folder, which is right here now, by the way, in Lightroom, in that drive. So it's even telling me what drive it's on. So Gina J in this folder on this drive. Okay, and it's doing them a few at a time before it shows them to me. And this is, by the way, a background process. So here's a new thing, or here's another thing about Lightroom. Whenever you see a progress bar up here in the upper left-hand corner, that is not a what we call a modal product or modal dialog, meaning you're not prevented from doing things at this point. You can click on a photo, you can go into the develop module, you can start working on that photo, you can start adding keywords to that photo, you can start doing anything you want without having to wait for the rest to come in. Any process that's happening up here, you do not have to wait, unless you're waiting for the results. But you do not have to wait for that to finish before you can continue your work in Lightroom. That is totally up to you. But it's bringing them all in thus far, and now this is going to stop, and then it's going to start another process. So give it a second to finish this, and here comes the other processes. Actually, two more. So what is it doing right now? It's converting to DNG, and I forgot what the second one was. Hang on. You can usually, hang on, if I click, you can usually go up here and find out what the other process is actually doing. I think it's, I can't remember. It's something to do with the metadata, I'm sure. I was doing them both. Oh, hang on, I keep clicking away from it because it didn't pop up fast enough. But whatever that second process is, they're both background operations. You do not have to wait for them. It will give you the name if you're patient enough to wait because it's trying to do it at the same time. So building smart previews. Oh, building smart previews. Okay, so it's building smart previews and doing the conversion to DNG at the same time. So that process will just happen. And again, it's happening in the background. You do not have to wait for it. So you can start to see the difference. So this one is a DNG because it's already done that conversion. And it'll just go one by one and finish those, but that's an NEF file, so it has not done that conversion yet. And again, I don't have to wait for this. I can click on any photo and do whatever I want. If I want to look at that photo larger, I can look at that photo larger. I just hit the letter F to go full screen, and now I'm looking at that photo full screen. I don't have to wait for anything to finish as long as it's happening up here. All right, let me check for questions. All right, we got a few questions here. You're checking which date, times, hours you took the photos. Well, you can do that anytime in Lightroom just by going up to the metadata options up here. So you can always find which date, time, or whatever. You can also find it on the individual photos here. It will be listed in the metadata here. So you can see that these photos were taken way back in 2010 because they're my sample photos I use all the time. And I can see all the EXIF data about those photos. So I don't organize by folders if that's what you're getting at, just to see when. Keywords are crucial. We'll talk about that. What else? Which color space do I recommend for storing files nowadays? sRGB, Adobe RGB, or Pro RGB? This is my take on two things. You only asked one question, I'm going to answer two. Whether it's color space or bit depth, whether 16-bit, 32-bit, 8-bit, well actually 16 and 8, or color space. For me, it makes more sense to always keep things at the highest level and work down if I ever have to, as opposed to bringing everything in at sRGB 8-bit and wishing I had more later. Because, usually some of those decisions are permanent. When you switch an image from 16-bit down to 8-bit, then it's an 8-bit image. You can't ever go back to 16-bit and get that data back. Same thing for sRGB versus Adobe RGB or Pro Photo, or Pro whatever it is, Pro RGB. Pro RGB is going to be the biggest color gamut. sRGB is going to be the lowest color gamut. Once I convert everything to sRGB, I'm never getting those colors back. So I'm absolutely keeping everything in 16-bit Pro RGB so that I can always have the best image that my camera took. So raw, Pro RGB, 16-bit, that's the best image your camera can produce. So why would you ever take it down for storage? For example, maybe bring it into Photoshop and some filter still works in 8-bit and you got to convert that image to 8-bit at that time. Fine. But your original images that you're storing will always be the higher quality. All right. See if I missed another one here. What do I do when I get the message one or more channels are too bright when I'm using the white balance for colors like pure aqua or cyan? Well, white balance is not for those colors, so that might be why you're getting that message. If you're talking about the white balance eyedropper, you have to remember that the white balance eyedropper is for finding levels of gray, not colors. And it will adjust your image accordingly. We're going to do it on one of these images, as a matter of fact, because I can look at these images and tell the white balance is off. And I wouldn't click on the color, her purple or yellow sweater. I'd click on the gray background, which should be, actually, that's probably should be a white background. So that's why you're getting that message, because you're trying to click on the wrong thing. All right. No problem. You're welcome for the prompt response. All right. Okay. So back to our story. And again, those processes are happening in the background. I'm not having to wait. I just took a pause to answer questions. We got 15 minutes left. So now let's talk about another way to import images. Since that's what today's first episode is about. We covered a lot of ground, but not everyone is going to import things from a card. Sometimes, or in cases where you're just starting Lightroom, but you've already had images on your drive for years, you're not going to put them back on cards and put the cards back in. You're going to import them wherever they are. So for example, if I go out to my operating system, I've got some samples here. Let's go to my desktop. And I got a messy desktop, but that's okay. I've got some sample images here that I've been playing around with. I brought over from a file server, just like these old Gina images. I've got some older images, or some other images here. And actually, I can probably start tossing some of these. Here, let's toss. Well, we can certainly toss this one. What I mean by toss is I don't need it on my desktop anymore because it's on the card, it's on my server, it's on now copied into the pictures folder. I just don't need that duplicate. It was a duplicate. All right, so anyway, I've got this Auckland HDR from my last trip to Auckland. And all the ones called training are because I'm using these images for training. So if I put this folder where I want this folder to live, I don't want it to live on my desktop because my desktop is not for my pictures. My desktop is for temporary things that I should be throwing away when I'm done with them. But anyway, I've got this folder on my desktop of images that I got from my camera at some point. Now I want to import those images into Lightroom, and I don't want to do it from the desktop because that's not where these are going to be from now on. So first and foremost, if you're going to import from folders, put your folders where you want them to live. In other words, I want them on this drive. I want them to stay here forever, or for a long time at least, and that's where they're going to live. And if I need to move them to a different drive later, we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about that in one of the later episodes. But for right now, I should start where I want these images to be. So if this were real life, right now I will, and it is, right now I want these images in my pictures folder. So I'll put them in my pictures folder because that's where they should live. Now I'll open up my pictures folder, and in my pictures folder, there's the Auckland folder. And in the Auckland folder is where I now want to bring these into Lightroom. So I can either A, go back to Lightroom, click import, navigate to this folder and bring them in. Or one of my favorite ways is just simply drag this onto the Lightroom icon in my dock. When I do that, it'll just automatically take me to the Lightroom import screen, and it'll give me different choices because these images are already on my drive. So notice what it did not give me. It does not give me by default copy or copy as DNG. Now we're in the move or add category. So I'm not really sure I prefer this as a default, but right now the default is move. In other words, do you want to move these two? Because I guess a lot of people are doing it from the wrong spot in the first place. Like had I done it from the desktop, I would want to move to the pictures folder. I just did it up front. So I could actually have Lightroom move them to the folder I want them in, even though they're already on the drive. So that is actually an okay default for beginners. But what I'm going to say is, no, I've already put them where I want them to be. I just want to add them to Lightroom. And notice when I click add, all that destination stuff goes away because they're already on the drive. There's no reason to move them anywhere else. You didn't say move, so the destination stuff goes away. Do you want to build smart previews? Absolutely. Are you getting them from this spot on the left side because it's a left to right workflow? Yep. Are there any that you want to uncheck? You can, but they would still stay in the folder. They just wouldn't be brought into Lightroom, and everything else is good. So do I want to bring in 21 photos and build smart previews when you're done? Yep, just do it. Import. And watch what happens. Well, two things happen. I'll talk about this dialog box in a minute. Number one, they come in way faster because there's nothing to copy. There's no data being transferred from one device to another. They're already on the drive. They just come over. Done. Boom. No problem. Now, what this means, the reason this came up, is because I shot these images in Auckland with a GPS device attached to my camera. So I have a device for my Nikon camera that picks up the coordinates of where I was when I shot these. So what Lightroom is asking, hey, do you want to enable automatic lookup, because it's a privacy thing, do you want it to tell you what city and country and all that is in? And I absolutely do. So I enable that. It's a one-time thing. Once you enable it, it's done. Now it's building smart previews, and it's looking up the location of 19 photos, and it's doing all of that in the background. Okay, so I've got, and yes, you can go away. Okay, so those images are coming in. So now notice what's going on here on the left-hand side. I have the Auckland folder and the Gina J folder, and building smart previews in the background. I can go back to Gina's folder and work with Gina's images, or I can go to the Auckland folder and work with the Auckland images. They're in two different folders on my drive where they live. They're not in Lightroom. Lightroom did not touch the images themselves. It did not import them in or move them to copy them to some weird space. They're in folders. Wherever you want those folders to be, on whatever drive you want those folders to be. Can you import images from a NAS or network drive? Sure. The catalog can't be on a network drive, but the images can be. As long as you got read and write permission to whatever source it is, you can import them from that source. Can you import them from a memory card and have them stay on the memory card? Yes, you can, and yes, that would be dumb. Because you're going to take that memory card out of the computer at some point, and then if you erase that card, those images will be orphaned. In other words, you'll have missing links to images that Lightroom doesn't know about anymore. And Lightroom will just give you a big question mark on the image saying, hey, I don't know where this image is anymore. But as long as you built a smart preview, actually, you would be able to still work with it. It just wouldn't be the full res anymore. Okay. Speaking of that, let me go to this real quick and show you one of Gina's, because Gina's finished and the other ones didn't yet. So if I click on this image, I should get, there we go. I was going to say, I should get a second display here. Notice it says original plus smart preview. This will say one of three things. It'll say original, smart preview, or original plus smart preview. Those are the only three, four things missing. So 4 things it will possibly say up here. Original means Lightroom can see the folder where that image is, and it's got a connection to that image. It can actually see it. Smart preview only means that the original image is no longer attached, or the drive's not attached anymore, but you built a smart preview, so you can work with that image. You can develop it, you can add keywords, you can do everything, and when you connect up the drive with that original image to it, all that information will be written, or if it needs to be written, to the actual file, which it usually doesn't. Original plus Smart Preview, best of both worlds. It means it sees the actual file and I built a Smart Preview. Missing is obvious. You didn't build a Smart Preview and the image is not there, meaning the drive is not there, you moved the folder, you did something in the operating system that Lightroom doesn't know about. And if you did that, there are ways to correct it. You can find the missing images, but the lesson here is don't mess with the images in the operating system. Don't go to those folders and rename things and move things around and drag and drop and move them to a different drive in the operating system. We're going to learn over the next 8 classes how to do all of that management in Lightroom. The minute you go start messing around in the operating system, you're asking for a headache here in Lightroom. You're saying, I'm going to screw you up, Lightroom. I'm going to do stuff behind your back and I'll have to fix it later. That's what you're saying. So stay away from the operating system with those folders once you brought those folders into Lightroom. Okay. Let's see. Can you link to your Dropbox folders on your computer in Lightroom? You can link to any folder that Lightroom can see. Yes, including Dropbox folders. But keep in mind, if you move the stuff in Dropbox or you whatever in Dropbox and you don't do it in Lightroom first, then Lightroom's going to have a broken link. Okay. All right. So that answers that. Building smart previews on the Auckland photos. Let me see if there's anything else that I want to talk about. Because we're not going to do collections today. We're going to do a whole thing on collections later. I just want to talk about anything else. Oh, okay. So here's one more thing about drives. Because we only got 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes left before the next stream. The next special mobile illustration stream. Notice that, or here, let me show it to you this way. If I go out to my operating system, my hard drive is actually partitioned into 2 drives. There's a drive called hard disk, and there's a drive called, or a partition called expanse. And there's something called server. There's actually I have a file server too. Notice that Lightroom doesn't see those other drives. They're there. The operating system sees them. They're mounted. Why doesn't Lightroom see them? Because Lightroom only sees what it's using. It does not keep track of drives that it's not using. So if I were to import a folder from either one of those other 2 drives, then it would show up here. There would be one called expanse. There'd be one called server. If I imported things from those other sources. Now, we're going to, again, talk about this towards the end of the classes here. Like I think it's the last class, actually. When you're done with everything and you want to move the Gina J folder to a different drive, you want to archive it, you want to move it off your precious space of your internal laptop drive. How can you do that if the drive's not even showing? So I'm going to show you a way to do that when we get to that part of the class. So just know that just because you don't see a drive here doesn't mean that Lightroom can't use it. It just means that you haven't used it. So Lightroom doesn't keep track of things you haven't used. All right. All right, let me answer any questions in the last 3 minutes here. If your computer or Lightroom says you can't import due to a lack of space, should you delete photos from the HF, or do you mean HD or hard disk, to make room? Well, let's say I was bringing in from that card. Remember I checked space real quick first just to make sure I knew I had enough space on this drive? If I didn't do that and I didn't have enough space and Lightroom said, sorry, you can't import to this drive because you don't have enough space, then I can't tell you what you need to delete. That's up to you. I can't tell you, no, yeah, go delete pictures, because then you'll be mad at me if you delete the wrong ones. You have to go make room on that drive however you need to make room. In other words, I can't tell you what to delete. You have to decide that on your own. But what that simply means is whatever it is you're copying off the card, you don't have enough room on that drive that you're trying to copy to. You can use a different drive, you can use an external, you can use a different partition, whatever, for the images. But whatever drive you're copying to, if Lightroom tells you you don't have enough room, it's because you don't have enough room. You have to go make that decision on how to get more room on your own. Whether it's get rid of music, get rid of movies, get rid of documents, get rid of move them to a different drive, whatever it takes. That's up to you. I can't make that call for you. But yes, that is what it means. Dun, 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 dun. No problem. You're welcome. About setting the stream for the amount of images you should have. And we got like less than a minute left before I have to jump off. So I'm going to go ahead and do my wrap up real quick. What I want to say is thanks, guys, for watching the stream. Thanks for joining me here on my learning stream, and we'll catch you on the next one. You guys probably want to stick around if you want interested in anything about mobile and mobile illustration, because the mobile illustration guys are going to take it up next. Take care. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. We'll catch you on Friday, same time, same channel. Cheers.